We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week joined by North Dakota Republican John Hoven. And Senator Hoven, we appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us for kind of a wide-ranging conversation on a lot of farm policy issues and sort of the news of the day here. And part of that news of the day involves what's kind of been the news of the day for the last couple of weeks, really, and that is producers looking for assistance as they battle the economic reaction to this coronavirus. And we've seen Congress act. We've seen the Department of Agriculture create the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. And here we are in the month of July, where as part of the CARES Act, there's that $14 billion that's now available to USDA's Commodity Credit Corporation. So right. all of that considered, all of the programs, all of the funding mechanisms in place right now, I wonder, in your opinion, as a legislator and an appropriator, does the department, American agriculture have an adequate level of assistance, or do you think this is going to be another approach is going to be taken at this in any kind of potential legislation we might see from the Senate on more coronavirus relief later this month?
Right. We need to do more. In other words, as you said, right now the CFAP money is going out, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, $3 billion in purchases, $16.5 billion in assistance to farmers and ranchers. And one of the things that we were able to include in the CARES Act, which was phase 3 of the coronavirus response, is the $9.5 billion, which is part of it, and also language that makes it available to livestock, which is very important. So those funds were combined with CCC money for the, in essence, $19.5 billion that is CFAP. But that is not enough. As you'll recall, Phil, you and I talked about it extensively before we passed the CARES Act. I'd actually gone in for $50 billion, and that's really the number. And so what we're working on right now is coming back in the next iteration, which I anticipate will move by the end of July, and there'll be additional funding. And so I'm looking both at the $14 billion that hit the account in July, pursuant to the report requirement, then there's another $14 billion there, and then additional funding that we would include in the next go around to finish out CFAP and do some other things that need to be done for our producers.
Yeah, Senator, you mentioned the $14 billion that you authorized previously, now available to USDA. How much more do you think in CCC authority does USDA need to do another round of payments and cover the other needs? And what are your other priorities as well that you think just have to be addressed in this bill with regard to agriculture?
Yeah, well, a couple of things is first that $14 billion, we'll add to that, and you can look at what the House did. Now you have to separate out. The House in total had like $68 billion in there, but a lot of that went to food stamps, nutrition, and those kind of programs. If you look at what they did just in the ag piece, as far as our producers go, that's more in that $33 billion range. Okay, so that kind of gives you, a general sense of where I think, we could be. Again, I'm not going to throw out specific numbers yet, but we're working on it, and that kind of gives you a ballpark. So we've got the $14 billion, but we're looking at something more in that, say, 30 to 35 billion range, all in as far as the need. And then we need to finish out CFAP, because remember, the way CFAP was set up, it was, when you look back at the first quarter, they were covering about 85% of the loss, but then going forward, it was only 30% of the loss. Also, there's some issues like with the livestock piece. If you marketed your cattle, then it was $103 a head. If you hadn't, it was $33. Well, for all the cow-calf guys, obviously that didn't work very well, because not only were you getting lower payment, you hadn't marketed your cattle. You don't market them until the fall. So there's a number of those kind of things that have to be finished out as part of the package. And then going forward, we're going to look at areas that truly have additional impacts that have to be covered. So you're going to see a lot of the things that were included in CFAP, but other areas as well, again, based on the need and the impacts from the COVID virus.
Yes, sir. One of the things that was included in that House bill was a significant expansion of what was originally a pilot program, or what is now a pilot program in the 2018 Farm Bill. That's this SHIP program, Soil Health and Income Protection Program. Only 50,000 acres authorized in the Farm Bill. The House bill would take that to 5 million acres, basically as an idea to a way to do something about the farm economy, address the commodity prices, and also address environmental issues at the same time.
Yep.
What are the chances of that concept being included in the Senate bill?
Yeah. Well, like we talked about earlier, I think that's in the mix. Again, how much you put into it is something we'll see. One of the things we've got to start trying to figure out is the supply-demand equation, right? And starting to bring these two into harmony. And so there's that aspect of it, as well as the conservation piece. The thing, my requirement, though, would always be on any of these programs is they've got to be farmer-friendly. Must be farmer-friendly. In other words, the farmers have to perceive that this works for them, it's a benefit, or I don't think we can be doing it.
Senator, I have to ask you about rural broadband. This pandemic has obviously put the focus on the gaps that exist across rural America in broadband service. The House Appropriations Committee approved fiscal 2021 spending bill for USDA.
Saw that
today. That includes $1 billion in additional spending, but you know that the need is much, much greater than that. What are the prospects for more broadband funding in the coronavirus bill, or is it going to be something more like more modest amount like what the House Appropriations Committee is doing?
Yeah, House Approps, you saw House Approps went about $500 million above fiscal 20 is what you saw, and so they had additional broadband in there. And remember, over the last several years, we've appropriated $1 billion to put out there in broadband, and there is a need, and we'll continue to do it. I think there'll be some in there. How much, I don't know yet, but in part because there'll be a strong push from our colleagues in the House to make that part of it. So yeah, I think there's a good chance there'll be some in there. The amount is yet to be determined.
In the coronavirus bill or in the appropriations?
Well, possibly some amount in each, right? And how much is going to depend on how that configures out. I think the next bill you're going to see move, though, is the coronavirus piece. I think you're going to see that happen before the end of July, okay? So that's going to lay out a lot of different things. Then we go into, September 30 and the need for the approps bill. Well, remember, even if we end up with a CR, that still puts $30 billion back into the CCC, right? So we can do these things. We can make this work. And even if we end up with a CR, we've got the CCC covered for ARC and PLC, all the things that we're going to need come, say, in November.
Senator, I want to wrap up with kind of a big picture foreign policy question. It's something that was discussed on this program a couple of weeks ago by Congressman Austin Scott, and Phil wrote a story on the subject for us this week in the Agri-Pulse newsletter. And that's this idea of whether or not the current structure of foreign policy and the current farm bill itself is adequate in responding to times like these, especially as we look at the market reaction to the coronavirus and things of that nature. There's been some calls that potentially it might be time to look at rewriting the farm bill next year, even though it lasts until this 2023 timeline. I guess your thoughts on that subject? I mean, is the current structure of foreign policy the right approach, and maybe leave it to the departments to offer some more assistance, or do you think a more wholesale level of changes are necessary, perhaps as early as next year?
Well, like you said, I've seen a number of the potential future House Ag Committee chairmen bring that up, and it's interesting to see their comments. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I think you're going to see assistance, like I've described, before the end of July. And like I say, we're putting that together right now. So I think in terms of what we have to do right now is we need to get assistance out there now. And I don't think that gives you time to try to start rewriting the farm bill. as we go into year end and people see how it works out with ARC and PLC and some of those kind of things, maybe there'll be some more discussion there. But I don't see us getting into a rewrite of the farm bill before we provide the assistance that our producers need now. I think that's the first order of business. You know, we can have that discussion about the farm bill, but I think that's something that would be down the road if it happens at all.
What role do you expect the results of the November elections to play in this debate?
You know, I don't. Again, in terms of what we're working on right now, I think we finish out and put together the package that I've just described, and we get that done by the end of July. And I think we're going to put something together that makes some sense. And then there's going to be that three-way negotiation between Senate leadership, House leadership, and the White House. Okay, and so I think we get that piece done by August 1. Then remember, there's that aid has to go out over the August timeframe. Plus, there's still additional things that I've worked on, like the WIP plus quality loss adjustment. That hasn't gone out yet either. That's got to go out too. So I think the first order of business is get that done, get that assistance out to our producers. I think we'll get CCC replenished, so I think we'll be in good shape with funding the farm programs as we go into year end. Then let's see how that works for our producers. What's the trade situation? What does China do as far as the purchases they're supposed to make? You know, we've done a lot of things here with the disaster assistance, the MFP, in the CARES Act, and now we're going to do another round. We got to get all this delivered and out there. That's going to tell the tale, I think, and then see what happens to the markets, because ultimately that's what we want to get back to. And before we make some other decisions in terms of what's the impact of the election or opening up the farm bill or something like that. I think that stuff's down the road.
So obviously a lot of things for all of us to keep an eye on here in these next couple of months, especially these next couple of weeks as we watch for future congressional action on more coronavirus relief. And Senator Hoeven, we appreciate you joining us to kind of set the table for what foreign policy can expect in those discussions.
Yeah, and remember, for our cattle guys, we have to do more too on that whole market thing with what DOJ is doing and USDA is doing on the investigations, getting more transparency, more competition, in that there's a tremendous concentration and we need more competition. We need, obviously, to help our livestock producers. Again, not just about immediate assistance now, but getting better access to markets for all our producers, both domestic and overseas.
So I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher and Senator John Hoven, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.